Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hillbilly Kitchen. Well, it's chicken soup season. So we're going to be making up a big old pot today. And keep in mind while we go through this, this is soup. If there are flavors you don't like, leave them out. If there are flavors you want in that I don't use, put them in. And there are lots and lots of shortcuts. And you will still have a wonderful pot of soup even if you take shortcuts. Now I'm starting completely from scratch. You don't have to do that. But what I'm starting with is some flavor vegetables. I have a medium-sized onion and a few stalks of celery that I have chopped up fine. Now lots of folks like big chunks of celery in their soup, and if you want big chunks, you cut it in big chunks. I don't like that texture, so I chop mine fine. And I'm going to put a little bit of butter in my pot and my flavor vegetables. And I'm going to kind of go over this and talk about it as I do it rather than going over all the ingredients together, because like I said, there's lots of substitutions and we want to do those too. I recommend doing this even if you're taking some shortcuts. And if you don't want to do the fresh vegetables, just take your butter and your spices and start with your butter and some spices, or maybe some bouillon in a pot to get a little flavor going together. And if you're shortcutting your chicken, you're going to put your chicken in with this stuff. Starting with fresh chicken. I've got like 3 bone-in chicken breasts. You can use a whole chicken. You can use a deli chicken, you know, the roasted chicken, tear that off and use that. You can even use canned chicken. You want somewhere between 2 and 4 cups of chicken in a batch the size of what we're going to make. But while my vegetables are sitting there cooking, I do want to add a little bit of salt to them, because that's going to help bring the flavor of the vegetables out. And just a tiny bit of regular black pepper. And then I'm going to put my lid on this while I'm working on my chicken. I want to take just a moment to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. If you use the link betterhelp.com/thehillbillykitchen, you'll save 10% off your first month. At BetterHelp, you will find 30,000 trained therapists who are waiting to help you through your specific situation. And what I like most about BetterHelp is that you can find a Christian therapist who shares your faith and your beliefs. And all the therapy sessions are conducted in your home where you're comfortable and it's convenient for you. I know we've all been through times in our life when having a trained, objective opinion would certainly help make life easier. It would help us through those situations where we're dealing with changes that are just overwhelming, or whether we have decisions to make and we just can't find the right path. So if you're struggling, join the 4 million people who are finding help their way at betterhelp.com. And if you type in the link betterhelp.com/thehillbillykitchen, or you click on the link in the description below, it'll save you 10% and it'll help support our channel. Thank you. Starting with fresh chicken. Now, like I said, you can use already cooked chicken. Not a big deal. This though is going to give us a really rich stock and broth. You can use the canned or jarred stocks and broths if you want to, if you don't want to do this. So I'm going to add just about a tablespoon of lemon juice to my chicken. Now this is not going to make the soup taste like lemon. It's just going to help bring the flavors out. And I'm also going to add a little bit of honey. That little bit of sweetness is going to bring out the flavor of the chicken in your soup, and it's also going to help bring out the flavor of the vegetables. Not much, probably less than a tablespoon, but that will help. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little salt and a little pepper on my chicken, and that's all I'm going to put on it, just a little bit. Now if you are low sodium, you can certainly leave all of this salt out, especially if you're making it from scratch. Now if you want to, you can chop up fine or grate up some carrots and put in here. If you're using already cooked chicken, I would recommend going ahead and slicing your carrots if you want some sliced carrots in your soup, and you don't have to do carrots in your soup, but it does add a little color and it adds a little flavor. If you're doing the already cooked chicken, I would go ahead and put them in there, whether I sliced them or whether I was going to chop them up fine and just add them into my flavor vegetables. But I'm going to slice up a couple of carrots and I'm going to put them in my soup later on when I add my, right before I add my noodles, because even sliced thin, they're not going to cook in 7 minutes like my noodles, and you don't want your noodles overcooked. Now you need some noodles in chicken noodle soup, obviously. Usually folks use egg noodles. If you're on a budget, egg noodles are twice as expensive as other noodles. So substitute some other kind of pasta. You don't have to use egg noodles. You can use another pasta. You can add in Better Than Bouillon to add some flavor, or some bouillon cubes. You can put some poultry seasoning in, and I'm going to put a little poultry seasoning in. And this has stuff like thyme and rosemary, and I'm just going to add that to the top of my chicken. You don't have to do that, or you can add just thyme and rosemary, onion powder, garlic powder, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, you can put that in here if you're doing the already made chicken, and put your already cooked chicken in here with this. But my vegetables should be kind of starting to sweat a little bit there with that salt, and get some of the flavor out of them and some of the liquid, and they are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add my chicken in this pot on top of these. I'm going to put my chicken in here skin side up, and that's because I want the flavor of that skin to actually drip down into my chicken as it cooks. That will make it more tender and more flavorful. Now, if you want more instructions on how to cook this chicken and get the broth, I have up a video on just how to do that. And I'm going to link that in the description, and you can click on that and go get more instructions on how to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the lid on this, and I'm going to let it cook without adding anything else into it for probably 30 minutes. Now the chicken will be done in 30 minutes, but I want to make a broth. So then I'm going to add about 4 cups of water to it, 4 or 5 cups of water, and I'm going to let it sit there and simmer until it is falling off the bone tender. You don't have to do that. And if you're making this with deli chicken, you can have your chicken noodle soup ready in like 10 minutes. So, gonna let this sit here and cook about 30 minutes, then I'm gonna add my water in it. Now we're gonna adjust the liquid in our chicken noodle soup until we have somewhere between 6 and 10 cups of broth. Kind of depends on how much broth you want in yours. And we're gonna adjust the flavors using this stuff over here, and you can adjust the flavor in yours, and we're gonna add some carrots and some pasta later on. But we'll be back and do that when the chicken's done and I have it separated. Okay, our chicken has finished cooking. I took it out, separated it from the bone and the skin, and I've also sliced up some carrots here. I sliced about 2 carrots real thin because carrots take a long time to cook, and I don't want to end up having to cook it another 45 minutes to an hour. So these carrots will cook quicker. They are really thin, and they'll also blend in with my egg noodles better. And like I said, this is optional. You do not have to put the carrots in if you don't want carrots in. And I don't have a whole lot of stock in here right now. You can see that because I didn't put a ton of water in when I boiled my chicken, but I did get a lot of flavor out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and dump my carrots in there, and I need some more liquid in here. So I'm going to add some water. You could also do broth, so that I've got me a pot of liquid. And you want to have somewhere between 8 and 10 cups. It's kind of up to you, like I said, how much liquid you want in your soup. I probably have about 7 cups in there right now. But you can see, even though I just put water in there, I didn't put any broth, how nice and yellow that is. That's from where I cooked my chicken with the bone and the skin. If you didn't have that, if you started with just your canned chicken or your deli roasted chicken or whatever, then you do want to do the broth, or you want to do your Better Than Bouillon or your bouillon cubes. And I'm going to add some Better Than Bouillon to mine because I want to boost that flavor up a little bit more. And you can use just this. So it's kind of up to you what you want, what you have, and it depends on your budget. This is a pretty big pot, so I'm going to add about a tablespoon or so of this Better Than Bouillon in here. And looking at the pot, I do think I need a couple more cups of liquid. We may add a little bit more of this to adjust the flavor a little bit more, but like I said, that's all up to you. You can add in some more of your poultry seasoning or your rosemary and your thyme and whatever you want. I'm going to add in a little bit of garlic powder. You can also use fresh garlic. I didn't have any fresh, but I want a little bit of that garlic flavor in there. And now you can either chop your chicken or you can shred your chicken. Just depends on what you want. You do want to kind of turn your pot back up though so it comes to a boil. And I know somebody's going to say something, so I'm going to tell you, I did wash this very well after I had my raw chicken in it. You do want to make sure you do that because you don't want to get that raw chicken all over everything in your kitchen, and you don't want to put your cooked chicken back in it, even though you're going to put it in the pot and it would be fine. You don't want to put your cooked chicken back in a dirty pan. So make sure you wash your dish. With chicken, cross contamination is kind of a big deal. Now I'm going to kind of combination shred and chop my chicken. I don't like the real long strings. If you do, shred yours. I mean, that's, like I said, it's your soup. If you're doing the canned chicken, that wouldn't be an option, you know, how you broke it up, because it's kind of how it is. You could chop it a little bit more, though, if you didn't want it as big as it was, or you could shred it a little bit more. And I'm not going to tear mine up any smaller than this because I want to have some chunks of chicken in my soup. But again, it's just up to you, your taste, your preferences. Okay, I want to get all of this goodness out of the bottom of the pan that I cleaned my chicken off in, because there's a lot of flavor in there. That's all the flavor that dripped out of the chicken when I took it out of the pan. So I'm going to kind of scrape that back in there. We don't want to waste that. As you're cutting up your chicken, it is kind of important to make sure you've got all the bones out of it, especially when you're making soup, because folks are not going to be expecting a bone, and you don't want anybody to get choked or crack a tooth or anything like that. That would make for a bad day. So as you're chopping it, check for little bones or, you know, whatever. All right, I put my chicken back in this measuring cup here just so we can kind of see how much chicken those 3 breasts produced. And that is way over 4 cups of chicken, which is plenty for this. And you don't need that much chicken for soup. It kind of depends on what you're trying to do, your particular tastes. Now, I don't have anybody with a cold right now, and I'm making this more for a meal. So the extra chicken, the extra protein is going to make this a really hearty meal so that it fills everybody up who's eating it, because that's more what I'm going for with this. So I'm going to add this back in here because I want everything boiling real big before I put my noodles in. Now, if you're in a hurry and you don't have time to chop carrots or wait for carrots to cook, because it is going to take just a minute for the carrots to cook, even though they were thinly sliced, you can use canned carrots. You know, there's just so many ways that you can cut corners and save money. And a lot of times, grocery stores will mark down those roasted chickens at the end of the day, and you can get a whole roasted chicken for less than $5. Those 3 chicken breasts on sale were $12. So if you can get a roasted chicken for $3 or $5 or whatever, $5, and save yourself the time of cooking it and preparing it, and, you know, save $7, do it. Especially now, because times are so tough. Now I want to check and see if my carrots are about done, because we want to let everything get pretty much done before we add these egg noodles or bow ties or whatever kind of pasta you want to add to this, because the pasta does not take long at all to cook, and we don't want crunchy carrots in our soup, or at least I don't. Before I go any farther, I tasted that carrot. I'm adjusting the salt and the pepper. The pasta's going to need some salt, and what's in here already needs some salt. And I'm going to add, about that much pepper. About a teaspoon of pepper, a little less than a teaspoon of pepper and salt. And then I'm going to add my pasta and cook it according to the package directions. This says cooks in 7 minutes. make sure your pot is at a full rolling boil before you add that pasta. And then, like I said, cook it according to the package directions. My package says 7 minutes. So set your timer and let it boil. Here's one more little quick tip about cooking pasta. When you're cooking pasta, when you're boiling it in some kind of soup, or if you're just making pasta to go with dinner as a side dish, add it to boiling liquid and keep your pot boiling the whole time you're cooking it. Stir it a few times. Lots of folks say you don't have to stir it, but stir it a few times and it'll come out perfect. Just don't overcook it. It's adding it to the boiling liquid that makes it come out good. So you can see here we have a really pretty pot of soup, and I wish you could smell this because it smells just wonderful. The carrots add a little flavor, but they add a lot of color. And you can see in my broth there's no sign of celery or onions. And if you're feeding kids, they'll never know those vegetables are even in the soup. Unfortunately, Alex is editing this, so she's going to see that I use celery. You can't see it. You're not going to taste the texture, and it gives it an absolutely wonderful flavor. Like I said, I'm not a celery fan, so I was fairly old before I started eating it because I didn't like the texture. But the flavor in soups is just wonderful. If you're not a fan and you hadn't tried it for a long time, try adding a little celery in there. Just chop it up fine and start it at the beginning. And you're going to have a beautiful, delicious pot of soup. Even if you take shortcuts with this recipe, you can take shortcuts, you can cut the costs, change the pasta out, use the deli chicken, just saute your vegetables a little bit, throw your chicken in there, then put your broth in. If you're using canned broth or you're just using the bouillon for your broth, put that in there and let it simmer a little while before you add your pasta. And it'll be delicious. Shortcut it, save your money. Times are tough, and I understand. And it's still going to be warm, homemade soup, and everybody's going to love it. I read somewhere that there actually are medicinal properties to chicken noodle soup. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this. This is in no way medical advice, but I do know when you're feeling bad or even just on a cold day, a warm bowl of chicken noodle soup sure does make you feel better. And it's one of those things that kind of brings back those memories of childhood. Maybe your grandma or your mom making you some homemade soup when you didn't feel well. I know this has been the absolute longest winter. Some of us feel like we're in the 99th week of January. It's been a rough one. So before we go, I want to leave you with Matthew 11:28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. The Lord is there for us, and He has rest for us, even in the 99th week of January. It is warming up, spring is on the way, and we'll get through this with His help. Thank you so much for joining us, the Hillbilly Kitchen. If you haven't already, please don't forget to click like and subscribe before you leave. Share our videos with your friends, and until next time, remember to put God first. I'm going to enjoy my soup now.